Hey everybody, it's Amanda Hill. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about family dysfunction. And the reason why I wanted to broach the topic today was because I actually just finished my first book, and it is on family dysfunction. I chose that topic because I feel like we all have it. You can't deny that. We all have, even in the healthiest of families, we still have our own level of dysfunction. And I felt like, as a therapist, one of the things that I've really noticed in working with people over the past 20 years is that a lot of times we have this dysfunction in our family or level of uncomfortability, but we don't really know how to manage it in the healthiest of ways, which leads us going to family events or even interacting with family members over the phone that don't necessarily turn out the best, or we're miserable. And we might not want to be miserable, but we are. So I wanted to touch base really quick and discuss a little bit of what family dysfunction can look like, and then maybe just some brief examples of ways that we can manage that better. A little bit, I guess, of an introduction into what my book is really about for anybody who might be interested. So, dysfunction is along a continuum. It can be as easy as, like, I just don't really like the way that my mom, brother, sister, dad speaks to me, or the way they said that, to abuse, right? And when I talk about dysfunction, and also in my book, I'm not going all the way over here to where we're talking about physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse. This is more along the lines of everyday type stuff that we all deal with when we are part of a family. So when I say dysfunction, I think it's important to note that everybody's going to define that differently. That could mean, like I said, something as simple as I don't really like the way this family member speaks to me, all the way to maybe, I am essentially feeling like I'm being bullied at home, or there's a lot of chaos and I don't know how to deal with it, or I leave feeling worse about myself, or I'm constantly being put down. It could be any spectrum of things. So don't discount your experience or think that it's not worth discussing or diving into as far as dysfunction and how to make that experience better for you. I think that what I've noticed in working with people, and also in dealing with my own family dysfunction, because yes, my family has it too, is that a lot of it just comes down to our mindset. So my mindset going in to the time that I spend with my family is huge when it comes to the dysfunction that I feel like we deal with. Now, I have 5 siblings, so it could very well be different for each of us. Just because we grow up in the same home doesn't mean that we have the same experiences. So my dysfunction might be very different than what my brother or any of my sisters would say their dysfunction is. But it's still my dysfunction. It's still my experience of what that dysfunction looks like for me. And it's still valid. So finding out how I can manage that the best is what I'm focused on, right? And which is what I would want you to focus on with your own family. And a lot of this is going to take like a self-reflection. It's going to be maybe hard to let go of some of the things that you can't control, but also challenge yourself to be a better version of yourself. That could mean, and I'll use my own situation as an example, but going home and knowing that there's a level of dynamic in my home where I feel uncomfortable. And so when I walk into that situation, I need to go in prepared ahead of time. So I have to do my own work prior to going home to see my family, to make sure that I am mentally, emotionally prepared for what I am likely to encounter. And also not blaming people for that level of dysfunction. Outside of, again, this spectrum over here where there's abuse and people do deserve blame, the family dysfunction that I'm referring to is really our own interpretation of the events in our family that affect us. And that could have to do with a lot of things. That could have to do with the way other people are acting in our family, but it could also have to do with our own triggers and how important it is to understand why those things are triggering us. When we understand our triggers and why they're happening, a lot of times we, on our own, can figure out a way to resolve those triggers so that when we go home and we're with our family, we're not experiencing them. We manage that situation better. We enjoy being around our family members that maybe previously triggered us. So, the first step that I always say is if you know that you feel a little anxious or you feel some dread going home or going over to your parents' house, siblings, aunts, and uncles, it could be anybody, really, it could be friends too. Then it's important for you to kind of, one, pay attention to those feelings. Why am I feeling this way? What are the feelings? Is your heart racing? Do you feel short of breath? Do you feel nauseated? Is it affecting your mood? Maybe not as much physically in an anxiety way as it is, I'm starting to feel the dread and I just am in a bad mood. So notice what you're feeling on your own before you interact with these people. And then once you have that awareness of how you're feeling, taking it a step further to think of, why do I feel this way? What is it about going home or taking that phone call that's making me feel anxious or that's making me feel dread? And there typically is an answer in there. And I talk about this really in depth in my book. But there is an answer. And if you can't come to those conclusions on your own, therapy is wonderful for this. A therapist can help you. But for example, it might be, I'm feeling dread and talking to my mom because every time I do, she gives me a hard time about X, Y, or Z. And then I get off the phone and I feel worse about myself. Or I'm feeling anxious about going home because I have this thing going on within me that I haven't shared with anyone in the family, and I feel like I can't be my real, true self around them. I feel worried about going home because I don't feel like I fit in. And when I'm there, it always feels like I'm an outsider, and that's a really uncomfortable feeling for me. And I don't know how to handle it. So knowing and labeling what that fear is going to be really important. Notice what's feeling in your body. Notice how you're feeling, what those feelings are. Label them. What is that feeling and why? What's the reason behind it? Past that, then, there's a lot of work to be done on what does this look like for me as I go in? How can I prepare to make this experience with my family over the phone at this event? How do I make this the best that it can be? And a big part of that is focusing on what we can control, not what we can't. So when I go home, for example, if I am super nervous about being around my family because there's something going on with me that I haven't shared and I just don't feel that closeness with them, what could I do? What's within my control as far as how I can change that interaction? There's a variety of options here. And this example might not be the best one, but it depends on what it is that I'm holding that I don't want to share or that I haven't. Is it because I don't feel safe sharing? Or maybe it would be good for me to share. Maybe it's time for me to get that off my chest and share it so that I don't feel that dread when I go home. Maybe it is something that I want to keep dear to my heart and I don't want to share it. Then I need to think of what those interactions can look like by me acknowledging that I do have some things that I'm keeping to myself, but also what can I get out of this time with my family when I shelf that and set it to the side, because that's personal for me. But this is a space within my family where I don't want to share that. So how can I choose to focus on the positive of that environment instead of just sitting in this quiet, dark, secretive space of mine that's affecting my current reality? Some of that you do have control over. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But you do have some control over it. So that's another step. Now, of course, when we get to this first, second, third, as we move on, steps that we take, it is important to acknowledge and know that changing your patterns, especially patterns that we have from childhood, are not easy. It's not going to be easy. And you are going to face some difficulty. You're going to slip and fall, or you're going to fall off the wagon, however you want to word it. But what's important in these moments is that we get back up and we keep trying, because ultimately, from my perspective, and the reason why I wrote this book is because I think they're family. They're always family. And we want to have the best relationship with them that we can. So putting the effort in to make your part of it as genuine as possible is extremely important and really vital for long-term health in your relationship with your family or friends, anybody that we're talking about in this situation. So it's going to take time. It's going to take practice. It might take you being a little more assertive than you're used to being, or even sharing about the challenges that you're facing and the ways that you want to be kept accountable, whether it's your friends keeping you accountable or even your family members if you trust them to do that. But the long-term goal is health in that relationship with those people who you grew up with, who are biologically, or maybe not biologically, your family, but who you value enough to have a long-term, healthy, stable relationship within the realm of possibility in that relationship. Sometimes it's important that we look at our family and we understand they can't be everything that we want them to be. And that's okay. That is what we have other people in our life for. If your family can't meet the needs that you have, then you reach out to other people for sources of support. That's what therapy is for. That's what friends are for. That's what your neighbors are for. So having other people that we can go to is wonderful, but our family's always going to be our family. And so learning ways that we can interact with them that ends up being conducive to a healthy relationship is pretty amazing when we can get there. So don't give up. This is very brief information on some family dysfunction and maybe the ways that we can look at it. Learning to grieve a family that we will never have, but learning at the same time to accept the family that we do is going to make a world of difference for you. And that's what I'm really here to help people with in my practice, obviously as a clinician, but also my work that I put into my book was for this reason. So I hope that I am able to be a resource for people who want to make these changes but aren't sure how to start. And I welcome any questions or concerns, emails along the way as you go through your own journey with your family. Hopefully I can continue to do these podcasts and maybe take some phone calls, hit them live and things like that down the road to get some insight from you guys on what challenges you're facing as well. Again, any questions that you have, you can always reach out to me. My email is amanda.hill, Hill, 80@outlook.com. My website is www.connectionsofhope.com. That is my mental health private practice that I run here in Indiana. We have several different locations with lots of therapists who are happy to help anybody in need as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you guys today for listening, and we will talk to you soon.